but I love how life leads you back to where you're meant to be one way or another. Whether it's the short route or the long route, what's meant to be will be.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you.
I want to share a bit of a story with you in order to help you believe in yourself enough to step out of a place of comfort and into the unknown in order to grow. And to give you a new sense of self-belief and understand that we are not limited by our past. Hopefully this story will inspire you to look beyond the past and into the future, knowing that the best is yet to come. Today, as I stand here as a TV presenter, a radio and podcast host, an MC and speaker, I think to myself, honestly, what on earth? Seriously, how did I even get here? For those who knew me as a kid, I was excruciatingly shy. I would literally hide behind my older sister when my parents would introduce us to people. And if they asked me a question, I would make my sister answer or push her in front of me. I was absolutely petrified. At school, throughout my entire schooling, I was too afraid to raise my hand to answer or ask a question in case I sounded stupid. And now I stand here speaking for a living. When I was 17 years old, I had one of those life-defining moments, which I didn't realize until much, much later on. And it was towards the middle of year 12, my final year at school, and my careers counsellor came around to a table of my classmates and I, as we were working in our homeroom. And she said to us, "Ladies, I'd like to go around the table and ask you what your plans are for next year. What university you'd like to go to, what course you'd like to enroll in." Simple bloody question, really. But over here, Mini Maritza had her heart skipping a beat. I genuinely hated roundtable sharing discussions, and I just wanted to sit quietly and work on my plan independently. Thought, why did I have to share with all of my classmates what I wanted to do? Now, at that particular time, I didn't realize the reason I didn't want to share was because my answer was not going to be authentic. So as the careers counsellor went around the table, all of my classmates answered confidently and diligently with expected responses. Accounting at La Trobe University, public relations at RMIT, human resources at Monash, business at Swinburne, science at Melbourne Uni, tick, 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 tick. All well-respected answers from all of my classmates. When it was my turn, my heart was just going crazy. I knew what I really wanted didn't even exist or perfectly fit into a box. There was no simple answer to what I wanted, to my dream career. There was nothing out there that really existed. The closest I could to probably describing what I wanted was to have a show like Oprah Winfrey, where I would meet and interview amazing and inspirational people. Doesn't sound that crazy to say it now, but back then I couldn't say that. How could this shy little girl who was too afraid to speak up with 22 people who she'd known for years and years and years in her class be the host of a show or speak publicly for a living? Please. The inner critic was fierce. So I squashed that so super quickly, and out of my mouth dribbled, "I'd like to enroll in a marketing course." So fast forward a year or two, have a guess where I ended up? That's right, doing marketing at Victoria University. And why? Because I was too afraid to use my authentic voice. I was too afraid to speak my truth. I was too scared that I would be judged or laughed at. I thought I wasn't good enough. So after an unhappy and unfulfilled year at university, surprise, surprise, I decided to transfer to a media degree at Swinburne University, but still unable to put into words to anyone of why I was interested in the industry. So I embarked on a media degree, still shy, still scared, but learning the basics and background of media. As the years passed on, degrees completed, jobs behind the scenes of production, including casting, talent and account management, producing, I realized I was still lying to myself and still hadn't opened up to the future I wanted for myself. I was at this time still so frustrated and I felt stuck and still bloody super petrified to try anything new to get closer to my secret goal of what I called in my head the Oprah dream. 10 whopping years passed and I had formed a pretty good career in media production behind the scenes. But I was still completely, wait for it, unfulfilled. It was then the next chapter started. And I don't know what made me do it, but I took a massive step out of my comfort zone and enrolled into a 6-week presenting course. It's interesting. I don't actually know what kick-started me to do that, but it must have been the fact that I'd wasted many, many years doing things that I was very unhappy doing. But let me tell you, I did not sleep a wink for 6 entire weeks. I would rehearse my on-camera scripts over and over and over and over in my head. And the night before I had to be on camera at the course and share my real voice talking about myself, I would crumble and completely over-prepare, like to the point that when I presented it, I sounded like a robot. But I finished the course and I did the best I could. And I walked away with a DVD titled Maritza Barone, Presenter Showreel. Back then, this was your tool to break into media, your one tool. You would burn like 25 copies and send them out to the main production houses and networks in Australia. And if you got lucky and the timing was right, you might land a gig. These days, there's so many more avenues to get a foot in the door. It was just not that way back then. And I became obsessed with trying to find a presenting gig to get me on my way. Obsessed time-wise. For years, I volunteered on any production I could. I went to crappy and sometimes scary castings that were in dark, dusty rooms in dodgy suburbs with one really questionable middle-aged man behind a camera. I remember this one time running back to my car crying because I thought I would end up being killed just trying to break into this ferocious bloody industry. I remember I landed this one job for a community station that had me filming in an old warehouse at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night, about an hour from my house. And I had to research, write, host, produce all the content without any payment. And I had a 4-month-old baby. So my husband would drive out there with me as I asked him to come because I felt too scared going alone. And he and our baby would wait in the car until 10:30, 11 o'clock on a Sunday night while I pursued my presenting dream. It was just craziness. But I pushed on and I pushed on and I kept going and I kept trying and I kept applying and I kept applying. And I can't even tell you, thousands of emails went out with my showreel. And then finally, it started to happen, and the gigs I were getting were slowly becoming better, and some of them even paid money or covered expenses. It started to feel like everyone who hired me felt as though the honour of being on their production was enough payment. Telling you this industry is cutthroat. But fast forward another 5 or so years, and now that my experience was up, I'd built industry contacts and I was getting regular work, I started to again wonder what on earth all of this pushing and striving was for. I'd completely lost sight of my initial goal to interview inspiring people and had just become obsessed with landing my next presenting gig. I was being handed script after script and reeling off words that meant nothing at all to me. And by this time, I'd filmed thousands of videos, been in dozens of productions. But again, I was lost. And I started to wonder, you know what? What is this all for anyway? Why am I chasing this goal? And what role would it even finally take to make me stop chasing and be happy with where I was at? You know, those moments where you're like, who the hell am I anyway? Like, what is this all for? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? It's a huge question. So I decided to start educating myself, and for the first time in decades began to read again. The first book turned into 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then on it went. And my thirst for knowledge on personal development, mindset, self-awareness grew and grew and grew, and as did my thirst for knowledge. And throughout reading these books, I would hear the word purpose used a lot. To be honest, it would really annoy me. Really annoy me. I wanted to know what my purpose was and how on earth I was going to find out. I'd had enough. And finally, after many years and many books and many retreats and courses and conversations, I found what it was that I wanted in my life. And guess what? It hadn't really changed from that moment when I was 17 in my homeroom and too afraid to speak up to my careers counsellor. My purpose was and is proudly to elevate people in the world doing incredible things for humanity through the content that I create. That simple sentence took me so many years to craft, so much understanding about myself, so much confidence to build. I definitely feel as though I took the super duper long extended route with 4 stopovers to get here. But I love how life leads you back to where you're meant to be one way or another. Whether it's the short route or the long route, what's meant to be will be. Through knowing this simple sentence, it gives me so much clarity as a presenter, a producer, a content creator, and speaker to try and mainly take on jobs and roles that align to that message. And when I knock back opportunities now, I have a little giggle at myself remembering what I put myself through to get here. As Bob Proctor says, clarity of mind is one of the most beautiful jewels of life. I know that if I didn't push myself to step out of my comfort zone, another 10 years would have passed and I would have remained unhappy, discontent, and completely unclear. The funny thing is, when you know what your aim is, things just tend to fall into place too. Like people come into your life in mysterious ways and you meet the right people at the right time. You get offered opportunities that seem too good to be true. Decisions are easy to make and things that felt so difficult before just seem to, sort themselves out. True synchronicities that make you certain that you are completely on the right path. I know my purpose will grow and change over time, but for now, for me, it feels so true and so clear. And it's never felt like that before for me. And that shy little girl is still inside me. She's still there, but she's grown. And she knows that feeling uncomfortable for 5 minutes to try something new, something you've dreamt about for decades, will be where the magic truly starts to happen. And if you're listening to this and wondering how you can start on the pathway to being more aligned with your aims, your goals, your dreams, your purpose, listen to what you want, what you really want, without any barriers. So if time, money, or other people were no consideration, just for a minute, what would it be that you would be doing more of? Or what would it be that you'd be doing less of? How would you be spending your time? And then no matter how uncomfortable it seems, just take one small step in that direction and notice how it feels. And if it feels like you have been lit up inside and on the right path, then take another small step. And then another small step. And then just watch the pathway clear for you to create your own slice of magic. It is interesting to consider these life-defining moments that happen in our lives. As part of a course I did recently, we were asked to make a list of 25 moments in our lives that we could build a story from. And everyone has stories. Every one of us. Whether they're little stories, big stories, sad stories, happy stories, they're stories. And as Lisa Nichols says, great stories are birthed from incidents and crafted with intention. So I invite you to sit with pen and paper and look back on at least 10 moments in your life that you can build a story on. Then build on that story. Tell yourself what happened, how you felt, and how it changed you, if you allowed it to define you, and what you learnt from it. What comes up in this exercise was pretty eye-opening for me, and it gave me the tools to understand myself in a more profound way. It allowed me to figure out why I had certain beliefs and certain personality traits. Is there something that caused me to be so reserved and shy, to not feel confident enough to share my voice, to feel limited in my abilities, to not feel worthy enough? So tomorrow, or tonight, or even right now if you've got time, spend 10 minutes crafting those incidents in your life that you can build into a story and see what happens. I love finding more and more out about myself, especially as I get older. But if I could have done this 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, wow, it would have felt good to know myself a lot younger. So go out there and spend the time on yourself. Get to know who you are with no distractions from anyone else.
I'm Maritza Barone, and thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and if something really profound came up for you that you want to share, let's talk about it. You can find me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And if someone you know will benefit from something that was said in this show, make sure you share it with them too. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and keep up to date with what's next. And if you can spare a few seconds, please rate and review the show on iTunes, just so other people can find us more easily and quickly. And as always, my friends, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.